Hey everyone, this is Tinderbox Meetup, Sunday, November 2nd. The day we fall back, the day after a very late World Series game for some of us. Uh, I'm Mark Bernstein, the designer of Tinderbox, and we've had a busy week with languages and AIs and all sorts of stuff. So without further delay, here's Michael Becker.
Hi, everybody. Typically in the Tinderbox meetups, what we do is we go around the room and we see if anybody's new. If nobody's new, we jump into a theme, and if we don't have a theme, we talk about whatever we want to talk about. And today, that is the latter. We'll just no theme today. Um, I don't really have anything planned, although I could explore. There's a backstage release integrating with Gemini, so if people are interested, I can walk you through how I set that up and talk about doing that. But I want to hear from what everyone else is doing. And Andreas, I owe you getting the hookmark file. I'll get that done this afternoon from last week's meetup. I apologize for this summer. I've been pretty much overwhelmed by stuff, so I'm a little delayed in getting the videos up. I will get today's up by the end of the day, I promise. Any topics? Who else wants to go around and discuss other topics that we might have?
I just want to say thank you, Michael. I'm in the car, I can't participate, but I want to say thank you for your efforts, and you don't have to apologize for anything. So thank you very much, sir.
Appreciate that. So anybody have any topics? So we've got a thumbs up on the Gemini. We'll get to that in a minute. Mr. Rogers?
Yeah, I just got a quick question because I'm series. Is it series or CERES or CERE? Is the application identifier I should use in all of my AppleScript automations so that I don't have to. Okay, because I have not upgraded to 11 yet because I have now because I've learned about how to use AppleScript with Tinderbox, a number of scripts I have to go through and edit. So if I just change them to series instead of AppleScript or instead of Tinderbox 10 or Tinderbox 11, I'm good for the indefinite future.
Yeah, the code name for Tinderbox pre-release was Ceres, the uh,
C
Roman
CER.
harvest goddess. And uh, under the hood, AppleScript has four-letter identifiers, case sensitive, that identify applications. This goes way back to Mac Classic. And so the natural choice was CERE. And so it's been, what, 26 years now, and we still don't want to break people's scripts. So,
Okay, so I'll use CERE, which
yeah,
also dovetails
capital
in.
C,
Yeah,
lowercase ERE.
and that dovetails in with carbon if you wanted to answer the pre-backs or the pre-show warm-up question.
Yeah, well, originally, Tinderbox was written to run on System 9, now remembered as Mac Classic. And OS 10 was still coming along and daring, but it became very clear very early that OS 10 was going to be, support was going to be necessary quite early. One of the users who got on to us about OS 10 very, very early was this guy who was working with IBM named Aaron Swartz. And I had a long dialogue with him on this and various other technical things they wanted at IBM. And he made an appointment and came to Watertown. And there was this 13-year-old kid at the reception desk who couldn't actually like see over the reception desk, but it was a bit of a surprise. Uh, so that was fun. Um, but Carbon was a API library for the Macintosh that was distinct and easier to write for classic applications than was uh, Cocoa, which is what we now know as the Mac Foundation Library. It seemed like a good idea at the time to stick with Carbon, and it only emerged after a couple of years that, in fact, Apple's promise that cocoa and carbon would be co-equal was not going to be kept. And uh, we and BB Edit got caught in a difficult technical place where carbon was going to go away. But we had a huge number of API calls that were quite fundamental and quite large applications. And getting it all to the new platform was a huge undertaking. And that was unpleasant.
But that facilitated, I think, in many ways, your ability then to kind of refactor Tinderbox based on, 6 or 7 years of experience. And
Oh, yeah. I mean, the code got much better.
So you're obviously coding in Swift these days, is that correct?
It's still mostly Objective-C++,
Ah, okay.
which is almost never talked about online, uh, which is interesting. I think Rick Siegel and I may be the only practitioners, but it's a very nice combination. And there are some parts of Tinderbox where we really need C++, and doing without C++ would not be fun.
was there a challenge in going from 32-bit to 64-bit when they removed support for 32-bit?
That wasn't really too bad. I have a friend, in fact, the guy who changed my mind about AI has a computational algebra package, which has to be taken still from 32 to 64 bit. And that's proving really, really tricky. There were a few weeks of unpleasant buggishness, but that wasn't so bad. Peter,
Yeah, I was wondering, what aspect of Objective-C++ is it that you really depend on?
uh, I don't remember the buzzword, and uh, it wouldn't really help in this context anyway. In C++, you can a child class can inherit behavior and distinguish it depending on the type of the arguments it receives. And that doesn't really work in Objective-C because Objective-C passes pointers and all pointers are tend to be pointers to IDs and interchangeable. So that polymorphism is really, really useful in a number of places, especially in the export system. But
I think
I wouldn't
multi-methods is
want
the
to
right
do without
buzzword.
that.
I think
Sorry?
multi-methods or generic functions would be the right buzzword for that. Dylan had it.
But
I really loved it in Dylan.
yeah, but all those overloads are important.
Oh, I want to drop into the chat one little Tinderbox function I wrote that seemed very handy. This will indent a block of text by a few spaces so that every single line in the block of text will get pushed in from the margin. I really couldn't have done it without the amazing ATB ref comment from Mark Anderson about how when you do split, lines that are empty just sort of get nuked and go away. So first, you have to replace the blank line with something else before doing the split. Otherwise, you lose the blank line. So I stuck a few funky glyphs that couldn't possibly pop up in any context I'd actually want to be indenting in the function, and you just copy that and paste it and have fun.
All right, and what's the use case for that?
The use case is if you're generating a document where you need to have a whole bunch of lines indented. In my case, I'm generating source code for a parser generator, and blocks get enclosed with braces. And to keep everything nice, I want everything inside of that block of braces pushed over by a few spaces, and this will do it. So you can just like have a text field in Tinderbox where you write some code. You want the code to be indented when it appears in the generated source code. So you put the delimiters in at the top level, and then you inset the value of the attribute in which you put the stuff that you would have normally tabbed in yourself by hand.
Got it. Okay, I understand the mechanics, but why are you doing that? I'm sorry, I missed that.
Okay, I'm writing, maybe next week I might have it good enough to show off. I'm writing a custom editor for creating parsing expression grammar source documents for the Peggy JS JavaScript universe parser generator. And it has hideous documentation I was constantly having to refer to. There was a real pain. Literally, as you're writing a grammar by hand, you just have one browser window open, reading the documentation for how the rules are supposed to be constructed all over them, and it made no sense to me. So instead, I'm using Tinderbox. I have nice custom attributes describing what cardinality do I want on the rule. Do I want to have a negative look ahead or a positive look ahead? And I basically just fill in the attributes with values that are understandable at a comprehensible high level. And then I'm having Tinderbox do all of the work of applying the rules for the grammar language in order to generate the source code that the grammar generator will be able to read. And I can just think up at the high level, okay, I want to have from 3 to 5 repetitions of this thing. So from, we'll get 3 value. 2, we'll get a 5 value. Cardinality, I select from
Are
2.
are you sharing screen or
Um,
confusing? It's confusing to hear what you're referring to. Or are you just talking or are you trying to show us something?
oh, I'm just trying to talk at the moment. I'll
Okay,
have it
got
to show next week.
it.
It's not quite good enough to show yet, but next week it should be. But anyhow, the big idea though is that instead of having to think about what the rules are of the language for describing the grammars, I can be at a real high level in Tinderbox and just fill in some intuitive fields describing what it is that I want to be matching. And then Tinderbox does the work of figuring out what constructs in the PEG language I need to be able to produce a grammar that it'll be able to work with. So basically, it turns Tinderbox into a custom editor that is easier to work with than if I try to write an editor for VS Code, it would be a pain in the neck. Tinderbox is much more natural.
Got it. Okay.
You're on, Michael.
All right. Let's see if I can figure out how to do this. I did it last week and I can try to remember. So Mark, actually let's go through this. Let's share screen. All right. So in the in the backstage, Mark has integrated with Gemini now. Let me pull that up so we could just walk that through it. So here is the backstage. For those that are not in the backstage program, Mark, can you drop the link to backstage in the chat and we can pull it up? So Tinderbox, our Mark Bernstein has created a program called Backstage that lets us as a community play around with early releases. Some of those releases are they're incredibly stable and for the most part and easy to use. Let me pull this up so people are watching the video can look at this. So this is the Backstage program. And so for $95, you can join the Backstage and get access to all of the early releases and new features and have a deep discussion on and help influence the development of the Tinderbox application and where we go with that. So here's an example of a post that Mark did in his latest one of the Backstage releases, B745, where he talked about his integrating with Gemini. So unlike other to the extent that I understand that Gemini does not offer a downloadable app for the Mac. And so okay, so here's the Gemini app. So you can interact with Gemini through your browser, or you can go to here, and on GitHub, a gentleman has written a command line interface for Gemini. And so you can download and use that. Now, I also was able to, when I was playing around with it, and we'll include all these links in our notes, I found that you could actually use the homebrew. And if you do Gemini CLI, here is the Gemini CLI homebrew command. So you can actually install Gemini CLI via using homebrew, and then that way, and homebrew is a package management software that allows you to kind of consolidate and keep all of your command line apps organized and updatable and such on your Mac. So, and it's one of many. I just happen to use, I think, was Roger Alexander on the call with us today? I think I saw him earlier. Yeah, Roger. Hey, Roger. So Roger is the one that introduced me to Homebrew and taught me how to do this. So it's not his fault as I make mistakes, but he's the one at least introduced me to it. So let me go and
Yeah, that's it. Blame it on me.
Yeah, I'll blame it on you. So any errors we go through right now, they're all mine. They're not Roger's, but we'll go through that. So let me open up my shell. Come on. My mouse is disappearing on me. Where to go? Where other screen? Got too many screens. Come on. All right. So here is the app. So if you want to install Gemini via or the command line Gemini, you copy the Gemini CLI. What you do is you would just copy this script, brew install Gemini CLI, paste that into your. I'm not going to do it because I've already installed it. You paste that in, and that will install you first install Homebrew if you don't have it. Just do brew install, and then you do brew install Gemini CLI, and that will install the command line script. Once you've installed it, there's a couple things that in order to make Gemini run, and I'll show you this. You need to. It will install as a. Let me pull this up here. It will install as a hidden directory on your computer. So I don't remember how to turn this off. How do you turn off the? What's the key command to turn on and off hidden files? Anybody remember? Let me look it up. Where's my chat?
I think it's like shift command period or something. Sorry, I don't know it exactly.
Shift command period, is that it? Shift command period. No.
Sorry, something like that though.
Oh yeah, it is. It's shift command period. So if you're in your drive and you hit shift command period, that will open up the hidden file directories, and you'll see I've got a .gemini directory in my app. So when you install the command line tool, it puts this hidden directory on your computer, and that's where it will host your the Gemini files that you're interacting with. So that's just something to be aware of as well. And what you want to do per Mark's instructions is you need to provide you want to provide a parameters file called Gemini.markdown in that directory, and that is what tells the app or Gemini how you want it to act and interact with, and what you're telling it to be. And my understanding is I'm assuming, I've not done this yet, but you can create multiple one of these if you want to change. The Gemini.markdown file is the one it wants, and then you can rename that. So if you have multiple kind of projects, you can play with different markdown files to have it tell you what it wants it to be. And here is the markdown file I generated. And I had Gemini actually help me create this parameter file. I said, help me create a parameter file that will help me use Gemini on my computer. And basically the general parameter is you give it a role, you give it you're telling it what you want to do. Like in this case, I asked it, you're going to help me, you're going to be a co-author of a historical nonfiction book. you're going to be here's the literary style, here's the factual constraints that I want you to use. And I like this instruction that Gemini came up with. Don't create or invent historical details and include unverified needs research if it has done something like that.
Read
Dave,
that,
go ahead.
read that carefully. It says, state the information with a high degree of certainty and include a prominent unverified needs research. What is the high degree of certainty requirement?
My understanding is, great question. I don't know. But my understanding is the AIs are a probability engine, and when they have facts like references or resources that they can actually specifically point to, or in the context I was using it earlier with when I'm using Claude, for example, I have a similar instruction with Claude, and I say only draw quotes from the 50 plus hours of conversations I've actually had with this person. And so then Claude makes sure that it doesn't make shit up, or when it does, uh, that's kind of how I've been doing it.
That phrase just seems very ambiguous to me because it could be interpreted a number of different ways.
Well, it could,
so-
Dave. I don't know, and I haven't spent any time other than asking Gemini to create this file for me. So
Well,
I don't.
I'd ask Gemini to parse that phrase. I mean, it
All
sounds
right.
like you could be directing it to state only the information that has a high degree of certainty, it really isn't clear to me. It seems conflicted.
Let's ask it.
I'm about to put into chat what Gemini has to say about that.
I just did. You're not seeing my screen? You're on mute now, Bruce. Yeah, that's what we're doing right now. We're actually
Yeah,
looking.
no, I know. I captured that, and
That 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 maybe I'm just not very sophisticated, but that seems strange. That this ensure the output remains evocative, academic, and slightly poetic, preventing the prose from becoming hesitant.
Dave, why would you have a problem with language like that? What's the
I
matter with you?
yeah. I get the context that
well, what's interesting about that, if you look at my chat number 2, this is not so wonderful. It says handling uncertainty. If the writer is not completely sure about a fact, they should still present the information confidently. So it's kind of leaning the way you were thinking, David.
He's probably
blow it past that rube.
He's a military briefer.
Okay, and then it says a clear warning that it's unverified needs research.
Yeah, the Venezuelans
but
are
the idea that it's stating it confidently isn't so wonderful.
Yeah, I found that quite often with Claude too. Even after I tell it not to make stuff up, it will forget and it will start making stuff up again. And then it's like, whoops, you caught me. It's pretty funny. Okay, so in other words, and again, we don't need to. You can refine this Markdown file however you want, but you need to have a parameters file in there to help give it instructions on what you need and want. Once you've installed the other thing you need to do is and I don't remember if I can't remember how to let me check the echo. Do you remember how to edit Mark or Roger? How do you get to the echo file again? The where you put in your ZHC file thing.
What do you mean? I'm not quite sure what you're asking.
Remember in the terminal, when you have to I can't remember.
Up arrow, down arrow?
No, come on. My mouse is going crazy here. No, there's another line item that you have to do when you're installing Gemini. It wants you to put the path to the path to the app. That's the important in your Z what is it called? The ZCRH file or something like that. Let me see if I can find it.
ZSHRC.ZSHRC.
Yeah. How do you find that? How do you look?
That's in your root directory.
Right.
Not your root directory, it's the home directory. Sorry.
I'm asking though, how do you look that up in the terminal again? How do I
ls-a.
Type cat CAT
No,
okay.
that's not the command I'm looking for. Let me see if I can find it.
Well, what is the desired effect you're after?
I'll look at let me look at my notes. I was that. Let me see it. Okay, got it. No, I don't want to do this. It's the source. You enter source and then the tilde. I'm not going to do it right now.
Oh, okay. You're asking how do you bring in?
How do you bring that up? That's what I was asking, but I'm not going to
bring it into the environment.
So yeah, so you have to create that's the word I'm looking for. You have to create an environment for Gemini. And what that environment does, and I'll hold my notes over here just so we can. So I'm not going to do it now because I don't want to disclose my API key. So when you launch the Gemini app, it wants an environment. Maybe Roger, you can explain what an environment is for me. And in that you will say this: export Gemini, and then you'll in your Gemini account you can get an API key. And then that will allow the command line app to interact with your instance of Gemini. So that's a really important step when doing that.
So what it's telling you to do here is, is in your ZSHRC file, create an environment variable called Gemini API key equal to what you see there.
Right.
You'd add that line into that.
Yeah, but can you explain what an environment is? What is an environment?
Well, the environment, if you will, when you launch a shell, okay, like you have up there right now, all the variables. I'm not sure how to explain this because there are things called environment variables, which Gemini API key was one of them. There's a whole slew of them. Get back to that terminal. Bring that back in.
Okay.
Type print env. One word. No, one word.
One word.
Enter. Let's see.
env.
There.
Those are all the environment variables that are defined. Some are defined automatically. Some are defined by various files that you source in. Some are defined by .vhsrc, and
Okay.
ZSHRC gets loaded every time you start a login shell.
Okay. And in that okay, and then in that environment, what's getting created is like your API key.
If you did follow those instructions, did that thing and reloaded the environment by doing source whatever it said there, and you were to do print env, in that list someplace would be that environment variable for the Gemini API key.
Right, great. And I don't want to do that right now because I don't want to show people my API keys. So that's the next step you need to do to make this happen is you create your let me go back to my where's my here it is. So kind of, and I'll include these steps. My mouse is all over the place. There we go. So you
have already done this, right?
Yeah, I have. I'm going to demonstrate. Okay. I'm just walking people through it. Right. So you create the homebrew install. You create your you ask it to I asked it to create a Gemini file, or they create the Gemini MD file for me to help me out to get started. You get your through this link, you go to Gemini and get your API key. You then create the environment and put the Gemini export code into your API key into your environment shell. Then you close Tinderbox, and then you launch Gemini. So let's go ahead. I'm going to close Tinderbox now. And then if I go to my shell and I type in Gemini, okay, that now launches Gemini, and then that also automatically launches Tinderbox. So that way I now have both Tinderbox and Gemini running. And now I can say, can you please create 2, 2 or 3?
Are others not really seeing Michael's screen?
I am.
You are?
Yes.
I
We're not
can
seeing what
see
he's
his
typing,
screen, but I can't see what he's typing. Yeah.
Primarily, Tinderbox screen is in the front.
I see Tinderbox and a bunch of windows. Am I
Yeah.
doing something wrong?
Yeah.
No, that's what you're seeing.
He's
Okay.
flipping back and forth. Oh, now he's in terminal.
Oh, there we go.
So here's the terminal app. So maybe let me redo that so you guys can see it. I'm gonna relaunch a new terminal shell. Come on. My mouse is just going all crazy today.
Have you charged it?
Ah, good call. Maybe I need to charge it.
Have you cleaned it?
It's optical. It's optical. All right.
It still needs cleaning.
Hence why you clean it. It's optical.
All right. So yeah, can you see my terminal? Yeah, you can. So I'll go ahead and type in Gemini now. That launches the Gemini command line app. That will then open up Tinderbox. And so now I can say, I can have Gemini work with Tinderbox. So in my, oh, man, guys, I've got somebody at my front door. Can you just have a chat for a minute? And I got to go. I'll be back in like 3 or 4 minutes.
What's truly
So how's-
interesting potentially about this, I use Gemini extensively now, and I've found it useful enough to go to Gemini Ultra, which has been very helpful to me. Things like its deep research, where it will go and present a research plan and give you 45 websites and references. If there's a way of getting those references in the Tinderbox, and that would just be, simply a huge time saver. And I find that the research that it does do under deep research consistently, I'm pretty pleased with the results. The worst thing that I can say about it is that there's a few clunkers in there. It will cite research that, and I suggest if you use it that you check out every single link that it provides, because it will at times give you links that don't actually exist. But the formulation, the conclusions, the comprehensive level of thought, I've been very impressed with on a number of projects now.
Let me get the correct window. Here we go. This is just a similar thing. This is actually Claude, but we've recently backstage been playing with a built-in Readwise import. Readwise is a service that gathers up your Kindle highlights and lets you see them and download them. And having your Kindle highlights in Tinderbox is not an unreasonable thing to think about. But in the process, I said, okay, Claude, we've done Readwise. What else have I forgotten to support in Tinderbox? And we kicked this around for about half an hour. And then I said, okay, before the session ends, make some notes on what we've discussed and suggest what might be the priorities. And, and this is actually untouched by me. This is just markdown that Claude threw into its notes. which are, Claude notes, important, not important, and lots of stuff, including this one. So in a subsequent discussion, I could start a new conversation, direct Claude to this topic, and it starts from a summary of about a half hour, 45 minutes of importing web pages and discussing the way to support services that have been discontinued. And I don't want to clutter the context with the stuff that didn't work. We just have the stuff that did work. Yeah, Dave.
A style question, but
Yeah.
why? What is the value of having Claude produce those notes in Markdown?
Claude wants to because Claude understands Markdown. And so uh, it knows that the two asterisks mean emphasis and the hashtags mean section headings. And since Claude is keeping its notes for its own use, if it likes Markdown, I'm not going to tell it not to do that.
Also, having your notes in Markdown when you bring it into Tinderbox, it makes it a lot easier to explode. You explode at the hashtags, and you can break your notes up and manage it that way.
Do you, Mark, view the notes as rendered with the style information, or you just tolerate the clutter or are they notes only for Claude?
I tolerate, at the moment, I tolerate the clutter. If I were going to look at it more than on rare occasions or just check that it's actually happening correctly, I would probably use something like Mark to render the note as style text. And if we find ourselves doing that a lot, well, it's not that hard to do. In fact, Preview may do it without, to some extent,
But it will
not
produce a file.
perfectly.
But it will produce.
But Mark, if you apply
If I apply the markdown,
if you apply the
yeah.
Markdown, it works perfectly.
Yeah.
And that's what I do. And we can demonstrate that today right now too if you like.
Yeah, but in the end, Claude is taking notes for its own use. My interest here is partly to look over its shoulder, but mostly so that I can leverage this stuff in future discussions. Bruce.
I have two questions. Number one, I started playing with Claude recently, was actually pleasantly surprised and found that combining Claude and Gemini began to give me the best of both worlds. And I'm wondering, when you're using Claude, I was just on the free version, and after a while it timed me out and said 5 hours from now I can do some more work. What are most people, what version of Claude, and Claude and Anthropic are the same, is that right?
Claude is a product of Anthropic.
Okay, got it. What version of Claude are you using?
Personally, I'm doing the $200 a month version because I use it so much.
Well, that's where I am with Gemini now.
Yeah, I'm just using the like $20 a month version, I guess. And I'm using Sonnet, currently Sonnet 4.5. There are different models that you can use that are thought to be better or worse at different sorts of tasks.
So my second question, now that we've discovered how to unlock Gemini and see, am I correct in thinking that you're able to basically see where it's storing the information locally on your computer?
Yeah. So let me show that to you now if you want.
But just before you do, I just want to finish my question. So Google, which I'm assuming is Gemini, also does note taking, and it does note taking after the fact. It produces that in its own Google Drive, and then it sends you a link. Is there is there a facility for being able to kind of watch its note taking? Is that something? And what I'm thinking is that that's something that possibly would then be pushed into Tinderbox? Or is the mechanism different that wouldn't allow someone to be able to see that?
What do you mean by watch its note taking and stuff?
Imagine you're building an
In other words, when I'm having a meeting, say a parent meeting, Google is taking note. I can turn on its note taking.
You mean it's listening to your conversation and
Yeah.
transcribing that conversation? So it's not taking notes; it's transcribing your conversation.
It does three different things, and that is one of them. It will record the conversation, video and audio. It will record a transcript, and it will take notes. Similar, if anybody uses Otter, similar to the way that Otter does, that it creates an overall summary, and then it creates a transcript. And it will also link the overall summary. It'll provide links between the summary and the transcript so you can get more details. And I'm just wondering if there's a way into that, because it always shows up afterwards and not far, a few seconds afterwards. So I'm guessing, it's doing it as it's going along, and then it's polishing it and giving it to me, via email.
I don't understand the comment or question in the context of Gemini, though. Gemini is not recording audio, it's not recording video. What do you mean?
Well, I think I don't know what part of Google is doing note taking. I'm guessing that it's part of Gemini because it's clearly an AI product that's doing it. You know what? I'll research it, and if I learn something, I'll come back and share it. I don't want to take time away.
Yeah, I mean, it's the Google Meets, when you say record my meeting and doing all of that, I wouldn't. It could be.
Well, Google Meet offers to take notes.
Yeah.
It's different from transcribing, and it does a darn good job of it. And even to the point that I can have it take the notes, and then I can go back in to Google Docs and tell Gemini I want it to write a clinical summary using professional third-person language, etc. I spend maybe a minute cleaning it up, and it's not a big deal. It takes me usually 10 minutes to do it on my own. It's not, but there's 10 minutes back, three of those, and I've saved a half an hour.
Yeah. And and all of that's HIPAA compliant and such?
Yes.
Nice.
Yeah, it's within it makes it very clear now. There are people out there who would tell me I'm a fool to trust Google, and they might not be wrong.
Yes. Chuck, would you like to weigh in here? I see you.
No,
sneering.
I am not going to weigh in. I just
Okay, sorry.
You know what? It's telling me that it is in a HIPAA compliant environment, and I have something called a BAA, which is a business associate agreement. And I'm not saying I don't care. I would not want my clients' information spread all over the internet, but I've decided to trust Google. And Chuck, you're welcome to write me off meeting and instruct me why I'm headed down a foolish road, and I will listen, because I highly respect your opinions.
No, Chuck is too much of a gentleman. And I'm not going to put my thoughts into words.
Well, no, Dave, I didn't say you were allowed to tell me.
So I wonder though, Bruce, in your practice, you write up notes at the end of the session, right? I mean, before AI, you're using this AI functionality to transcribe the session and write up your clinical notes.
Well, actually, I have a different kind of practice. One could do it that way. This is really for my parent meetings, where I'm talking about 15 different students at once and going through. And what Notes is able to do is it's able to parse all of that out for me. And where Tinderbox would come in is then it would let me create more individualized reports. That's the part that Gemini hasn't figured out how to do so well.
What I'm curious about, and perhaps there's no cause for concern here, is that the act of writing is cognitive. It is thinking, and you are offloading that function, that responsibility to an AI. That your notes will be the product of something that Google created for you, that when you look at it, you edit it and you think it meets your needs, but you never went through that cognitive process to create those notes. Whatever the value of that cognitive process in your own mind, in your practice, in your history with your clients, that is now gone. You have outsourced that to Google, and that resource is no longer available to you because you didn't create it. That's what troubles me about these types of things.
It's an absolutely reasonable point from two perspectives. One is, am I giving up some exercise of my brain to be able to continue engaging in that skill? And the way I look at it is that, I have 65 families that I'm working with, and it is proven to be an enormous time saver. I'm still creating my own reports. So I don't rely on AI to produce a report but this is really just collecting data. There's something, without getting too far afield, there's something called a SOAP format, SOAP or SOAPE. It just stands for subjective information, objective information, what's your plan, or what's your assessment of the situation and what's your plan. And I get enough info. I'm actually terrified a little bit at how thoughtful Gemini or the AI is when it does evaluations. It's actually pretty on target for considering various diagnostic possibilities. But I'm just using it I'm using it at a light level. When it comes to actually formulating things and putting together reports, we still do all that by hand. We have templates that help us, but the actual meat of it, the clinician viewpoint and analysis, that's pure me. I'm not comfortable yet using AI for that. So if it makes sense, it's collecting the data. It's collecting the data based on what people are saying and letting me look at it. I don't know if that makes sense.
No, that makes sense. It just seems to me that whenever, there's a trade-off in any of these advances in technology where we gain something, typically time, but we lose something and it isn't often clear what we've lost until it's far too late to do anything about it.
It's a reasonable point, but I have to tell you that for any clinician who has to do any number of notes, getting those progress notes squeezed in is the bane of it's just a mountain of work. And for many, I'm not in this position, but for many clinicians, they're really just documenting for insurance. They are not going to put into, and that's where AI actually can be a problem. Someone tells you they're using cocaine, or someone tells you things that you would never want to be in an actual note. Are you savvy enough, or can you instruct it to leave out certain bits of information? I don't run into that problem because when I run these parent meetings, I'm just going through videos and I'm talking about kids' behavior, and it's at a pretty light clinical level, if that makes sense. It's the number of people I'm talking about at once that makes AI very useful for me. For me to parse out 15 different kids and go through the recording, I used to do that. It took me 3 hours. And the fact that I can now do the whole thing in 10 minutes, huge. But your point is more than well taken. Unless it is throwaway writing, AI does not get to write for me. I'm not there.
Mr. Chuck.
Well, just to follow on that, since my name was taken in vain by certain individuals, I think the challenge in all of this is the same challenge we run into time and time again in the past, which is we humans have certain capabilities, but we are fallible. We make mistakes. And there are certain areas that we're always going to have difficulty with, such as recall, and the ability to integrate facts in a rational way. And to the extent that computers made it easier to do that. I mean, let's think about it. I first started using a computer to help with writing using Runoff back in 1970. And what was I doing? I was using a word processor. Did it improve my writing? Well, to the extent that it made editing easier. But if you think back over the 50 years since then, we've gone from word processing to document creation to illustrating, being able to bring in pictures and photographs and dynamics, and eventually moving into video. We've done many things in the creative area that have been enabled by computers that would have been extremely difficult to do as an individual. Used to be people did it. The challenge, I think, is when we confront a new tool like AI, we have to think about many things which are, in some respects, I believe, troublesome, which is, how does this tool help me do things better? And one of the questions I would always ask is, there are trade-offs. Am I getting enough time benefit to put my human efforts into the things that the computer and the AI system is not going to be able to do well, or that can't be trusted for? If it's a time trade-off, then the tool is being effective. If it supports laziness, slap it out, make more money because I throw out all these consulting reports and people pay me for them, and I didn't do anything significant like I used to have to do. That's not an effective use, I guess, in my mind, or it's a lazy use. And I think the challenge is every individual is going to divide this differently. And we have a further challenge, which is we're not in control of this technology. And when I say we're not in control, it isn't just us who are having difficulties understanding what AI does. It's the people who haven't brought us AI, who do not understand how it works. And they are out there with dollar signs in their front of their faces, looking at $5 trillion market capitalization of a company that's just producing chip design. I mean, for heaven's sakes, we're the cogs. We're not even the cogs. We're the sand in the cogs of this giant machinery being ground up for mostly power and monetary gains. That's troublesome. Does it mean that we can't use the tool, though, and find effective uses of it? I don't think so. But we have to put it in context. We are dealing with tools that are not necessarily aimed at what is good for us or is good for humanity. We're using tools that are being brought forth because they make money. Well, and look at how many times people talk about the subscription costs for these tools.
To Chuck's and Dave's point, I receive weekly now requests. I think people come across my name and some of the little bit of technology that I do, and so they reach out. These software companies that are developing note-taking, report writing, analysis programs right and left. And what's so interesting to me is they provide me with so little information about how their program was developed, how they keep things safe, what some of the mechanisms are, what some of the guardrails are. And the minute I write the person back, if it seems a little bit interesting to me, because I don't want to use it myself, but I'm in a position where I inform other people about this. Anyway, they don't know. The people contacting me, they're just trying to do what you said, Chuck. They're just trying to make money at the moment. Mm-hmm. And it is once again the Wild West. It's a new version of the Wild West out there. And I would hate to be the person who ever had to testify based off AI generated information and found that it wasn't accurate. That's not the moment that I want to discover it, but it's out there and it is an entire business. And, I'm a psychologist. I'm a small piece of the pie. You look at what's happening with medical transcription and that's really where it is. I mean, I would say pretty much everyone, I think, is using that now. You know, that's scarier to me than my little piece.
Right. The analogy I would use is if we think back to the 19th century, and railroads became the big thing. And if you ask yourself, if you want to go from New York to Chicago, you want to do it on a stagecoach or do you want to do it on a railroad? Well, of course you'd want to do it on the railroad. If you were a farmer who needed to get produce to market in time before it spoiled, what would you use? You'd use the railroad. That led to the railroads becoming empires. The banditry of corporate enterprises. And that hasn't stopped. And I think we're just seeing on a much grander scale the same kinds of things happen. Do you not use a railroad if it's there? Of course you'd use the railroad. It's cheaper, it's more cost effective, and it saves you a boatload of time and effort, and it's far safer. If you want to get from New York to Los Angeles, would you take a plane? Of course you would. But we need to put the tools in context. What is this doing for me? What is this doing for the people I am supporting? Versus what is this doing for the railroad company or the airline or the big machine cloud in the sky?
Well,
those are the questions we need to ask.
Give you a great question, and it's kind of a buyer beware kind of thing, and the liabilities are unclear and all that. But one really interesting example is like, how did we get to cloud computing in cloud environments like we have right now? It really started out as Amazon trying to solve their own problem. You know, Amazon needed to build their environment so that they could scale up to meet holiday demands. And, you know, and so they had to have this incredibly robust, resilient infrastructure for them to be able to meet holiday demands. And they wanted to figure out a way to get other people to pay for it. So they created the cloud environment to be able to outsource or, offload their computing infrastructure to other companies. And so we all started adopting into this Amazon model, but it was really at the beginning, it was Amazon trying to solve a cost structure problem that they had in their business.
Well, that's the whole
it was not
finance.
It was not Amazon who invented that, by the way. The cloud was starting to emerge before, but they facilitated it enormously and made it credible.
It was also part that the computing was all going to move to the edge, and you were just going to have a box on your desk. And now I completely forgot what I was going to say.
Yeah,
I was going to butt in about the fact.
Go ahead.
Sorry, Chuck, you go.
No, I was just going to comment that one of the things that one of my partners asked me to consider writing up was a comparison. The AWS had a major failure a week ago, 2 weeks ago, I guess. Single point of failure. The very system that they use to facilitate all this magic redistribution of the resources so that everything stays up and works and can be shifted around, that was the thing that broke. And what my partner asked me to do, we worked with the major stock exchanges back in the early 2000s, right after the September 11th terrorist attack, on building a resilient network for the securities industry. And one of the things that came out loud and clear was that the securities industry was very dependent upon communications infrastructure. Where do they get it from? Well, of course, they got it from the telcos. And they had all purchased resilient, guaranteed by contract, diversely routed paths between them and the major exchanges. Guess what? When the terrorists took down the World Trade Towers, they took down some infrastructure. Fortunately, they did not hit the one building in New York City that would have shut down our economy for years. They didn't know about it. Everybody came to the conclusion that, my God, we've got a real problem here. Surely the telephone companies must be very interested in solving the problem. They, in turn, wrote a letter to the President of the United States explaining, no, this is a customer problem. Customers have to solve their own resiliency of communications problems, which is what we then did with the New York and American stock exchanges for the securities industry. So we come to today and we have AWS that has a major failure. And first thing I'd ask you is look back and ask, my goodness, people should have abandoned the telephone companies back in the early 2000s because they weren't building resilient systems. Anybody done that? No. Those companies are more powerful, bigger, and they've taken over the entire internet in terms of, both last mile and core backbone structure. Is anybody going to stop using AWS or Microsoft's Azure for all of their major failures and catastrophe security problems? You'd say reputational damage should crater these companies, but it won't. They'll just keep on going.
Well, there's not enough of them.
And
There's not enough alternatives.
Well, that's part of the problem. We have not monopolies, not duopolies, but we've got multiopolies all working against each other, competing more with each other than they are with anything else. And the point I would make is when we look at something like AI, we have to put it in that context and think about what are the motivations driving the development of this? Where are those motivations consistent with what I need to do or what my organization needs to do versus where are they inconsistent? And the whole question of trust is extremely difficult when you're being confronted with the question of trusting major corporations that are collections of fallible people doing all kinds of things for different purposes. It's a complex problem, but it's no different from any problem we've dealt with before.
Under the pressure of competition and quarterly reports, that you can't be the guy dragging your feet on the adoption of these technologies, lest you be left behind and you get punished for it in the market. So we're racing to a cliff, I think. And how this all sorts itself out, I don't know. We are in the multi-crisis now, or and my one hope is that AI would achieve super general intelligence and figure out how to solve our problems for us without destroying us, or at least if we manage to destroy ourselves, don't watch the movie Netflix. My short-term memory sucks now. Very good movie on the nuclear House of Dynamite. Watch House of Dynamite and our inability. We do not have the facilities, the capacity for decision making in that scenario. And why anybody can sleep at night is beyond me. But I'm hopeful that we have automated general intelligence so that at least it has a memory of humanity after we erase ourselves from this planet.
Okay. That is a frightening movie, by the way. It's actually pretty good.
I didn't mean to make this conversation dark. I was trying merely to say that we have some new tools. We just need to recognize that history will repeat itself, but just on a grander scale. And that's how we got to look at it. That's all.
But we don't have the capacity to. That's the thing. This is the singularity. This is, our technology has advanced so far that we can no longer make meaningful predictions about its trajectory. That, Fox News was taken in by fake AI generated videos on TikTok and reported them as news. And then when they were called out on it, was discovered it was created by Sora. They just changed the story. They didn't report that they were duped or that they reported them wrong. They just changed the headline and made the story about these AI generated videos going viral. We are destroying our capacity to discern reality. And I don't see how that ends well.
Yes, and unfortunately, AI will be a tool for people who want to sow disinformation, as well as a tool for people who want to create, contribute, add value. And, the world is bifurcating into two camps. And it's those who think community first and those who think self and family first, or self and tribe first. And unfortunately, I think genetically, human beings and other animals are disposed to perfectly balance out those two extremes. So that's my philosophical observation on why the world is the mess that it is because we have created the ultimate polarization. And we now have the ultimate political systems to exploit polarization. So we are what we are. And I've gotten way too philosophical here, and I'm going to shut up because
All right.
I'm not sure I took this into a constructive dialogue. I was very interested in what Michael was showing us, and I'm kind of anxious to get back to it.
Chuck, as always, I value the role of provoking you into the philosophical explorations. Thank you.
No, but just to conclude on that point, though, and I teach my students this all the time. We don't have a choice, but yet to if you're in the workforce right now, you have to learn these tools. You cannot ignore them. It is basic literacy now. And if you don't figure it out how they will work for you and to Chuck's points, you're going to fall behind and not be employable, period. And it's, and you can be sad about that. You can be frustrated about that, but if you can fight it, but this is like the push to the west in the old days. And if you don't do it, you're dead. Commercially and quite possibly not so figuratively. We'll see what happens. All right, so let's finish the demo, Gemini demo. Okay, so and just to reiterate where we were. So to set up the environment, you need to install get something like Homebrew or install the Gemini command line interface. The nice thing with using Homebrew is it'll allow you to maintain it. So when the developer makes updates, Homebrew will help you be able to install those updates really easily and quickly. Once you've done that, you create the parameters file in your Gemini directory. Again, you need to do that manually. So you'll go to your computer, as Art pointed out, you'll hit Shift Command period. That will open up your hidden directory, and then using a text editor, or I prefer BBEdit, you create this Gemini.md file, and we'll just show you that again. And that Gemini.md file is what will just make sure you guys can all see that. Is what you will use to explain Gemini who it is. You're giving it a role. You're giving it the style and tones that you want to use. And in terms of that point of needing to learn tools, needing to learn AI, grokking and getting your head around the importance of telling the AI what personality you want to have when you're interacting with it is incredibly important. And you can do that in all of the AI tools when you're starting to chat. Your prompt could be, your role is this, your tone should be this, your style should be this. And setting that up will really, really influence the results that you get back from the tool. Okay, so that's the basic hygiene of setting this thing up. Then what you do is you launch your terminal. And let me get the terminal back. And then you launch Gemini. Okay, and you'll notice here Gemini is saying, I'm using the Gemini.md file, and it's using its MCP server to be able to interact.
You're not showing your terminal window.
Okay, let me find it again. Here we go. All right, so you'll see it's telling me which MD file it's using and which MPC server and MCP server. I suspect, and I'm not played with this, I could probably tell it use a different MD file, and for this project use that. But I've not played around with that to be able to experience that. So now we can say, okay, can you create 3 notes in Tinderbox? And then we'll go off and we'll start doing the process. Of course, what would you like to call them? And how about Rise me. Okay. And one thing I like about Gemini is it actually gives you, and I left the, you can say yes, use it once, use it always, allow the tool to create notes in Tinderbox, and I just hit 1. So it's got these permissions, and then there you go. And it's now created 3 notes in Tinderbox for me. Now I could do something else. I could say, hey, I recently saw a great talk from a professor at MIT who discussed liquid AI. I can't type. Can you write me a 750 word article that explains that liquid AI to normal transformer based AI. Okay. Please format it in Markdown and post the article in my Dropbox. Okay. And let's see what it does. All right, you can see it's thinking. And we'll give it permissions to do it. Let's go to the outline. And here is our liquid AI article. And you'll notice that if I've got the markdown formatting and the different bullets and all of that, and then what I can do is I can hit explode, for instance. And I can break at the, now here's an important thing when breaking at delimiters with hashtags, is if I were just to go like here, break at the hashtags, I could do that and I'll get my 5 notes. If you really want to be specific, you say break at the line break, say like #1, and that will just give me the 1 note. That is the title of the note. So I can pull that up. And now I can say, now break at 2 hashtags. Oops. Oh. And now I have moved that out of the explode. Whoops. Come on. Oh, I'm in preview. Just a minute. Where'd my mouse go? That is so weird. Why is it doing that? There we go. Move that out of explode there. And so now we have our exploded article in Tinderbox. We can remove that. And here is our exploded article in Tinder. And then I forgot to remove the headings on that. Okay, and then if we apply our HTML template in here, templates, HTML, and we pull in the inspector and apply our HTML template. We go to window, preview text pane. Huh. Why am I not seeing the preview text pane? Oh, that's not what I wanted. There we go. That's smaller. HTML. And there's our article. And then if you wanted this to be formatted in Markdown, what you would do is you would go uncheck the markup text. You would go to the quick stamp and say HTML Markdown. HTML Markdown. And make that true. Then you say preview command and make that common mark. So now, did I do that right? It should been, or did I do the wrong one? Markdown. Maybe it's this one. No. HTML Markdown is true. Markup is off. Oh, I know why. Maybe I have to do it for all of them. Oops. We could also just do it with the prototype as well. There we go. And command. Comment mark. That should work now. Oops. There you go. And so now everything's formatted in Markdown. And if you want to, and there's other ways to get the Markdown in there. You could go ahead and add the pre-installed Markdown prototype if you wanted to, which Mark has produced for us. So if you did that, you can apply that to all your notes, and that will show show it to you in Markdown. Or if you wanted to create your own Markdown template, you'd say P notes, for example. Give it like a little icon like that, and so we'll do it in steps just to show you. So we'll go down here. I'll see there's my P note, and because I did that, you'll see. And then it's all currently working in Mark. Now I gotta reset their inheritance because I just changed the inheritance on this. So let's reset that to default. And we'll go to HTML. Markdown. Reset that to the default and reset that. Markup text. Reset that to the default. Okay, so now that it's all defaulted, you'll see I'm not getting my Markdown now. So now if I set it at the prototype level, I can say I want you to use that. I want you to turn that off. I want you to use whoops. I want you to use Markdown. And I want you to use the common Markdown rendering engine. And now that we've done that, you'll see my prototype is now my own personalized Markdown note. So now that's how you can render and review your notes in Markdown. And then let me try this. Can you give me 500 words on Tinderbox? Put the file in put the article in my Tinderbox file and apply the P note prototype to the
article is misspelled if you care.
What?
Article is misspelled if you care.
I don't think I care. Let's see what it does. That's the one nice thing with
it's been trained on your typing problems.
Exactly.
I found that it's very forgiving.
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so by the way, the Liquid AI, I saw the founder of the company speak a few weeks back, and they were talking about how they a typical transformer will have like 100,000 neurons to run a particular job. They modeled their AI off of a worm's brain that has 19 neurons, and they can now outdo the same or outperform 100,000 neuron AI model with their 19 neurons. And what that allows them to do is also put the model on edge computers. It reduces the energy consumption of the AI. It will create and improve privacy relations, but more importantly, they can actually see how the AI is actually thinking. In a 100 transformer or a neuron model, AI will spit out an answer, and it's really hard to trace how it got to that. Whereas in the Liquid AI model, they can actually trace how the AI got to the decision, which is kind of fascinating.
Yes. And $5 trillion worth of market capitalization goes poof overnight.
Right. All right. And then here's our article on Tinderbox. I wonder why I put it there. And it did not apply the prototype. So can we not have it give commands? Mark? Do you know? Can you apply the P note prototype to this note? I've played with this that much. Yeah, it looks like it's not doing that. All right. The one other thing I wanted to show you though, so we demonstrated that we can create articles and stuff. I'm not sure how to get it to do that, but let me show you or to apply different activities, but let me show you this. So if I pop into my Gemini, one of the things I found was really interesting is you'll notice here, Gemini is also recording a log of our sessions in the hidden folder. And so if we look at that, you'll actually get a JSON file of the session that we were developing.
We're not seeing what you're talking about.
Sorry. So there's the JSON file of the session we've been having with Gemini. Let me pull this up. And there's the file. So in the Gemini directory, there is a folder that actually gives you all the sessions. So you can kind of track back, and there's the article we wrote with it together.
Mm-hmm.
And all of the interactions it had and the timestamps. I haven't spent that much time digging into this, but it's kind of interesting. And it looks at the overall tokens it used. Yeah, and so you can kind of log what the AI was doing while you were interacting with it. Peter.
Yeah, can it suggest tags for an article?
I have no idea. I'm sure it can. Let's see. Let's go here. Good. Okay. So I just hadn't hit enter. So you notice it just added the P prototype to that note. So that's cool. So you can have it do commands. And then let's add tags to this. Look at this. Can you create relevant tags for this article?
Not going to understand TAS.
Sorry. Why did it do all that? Looks like I need to close my terminal and start over. Come on. Gotta open a new shell. I did something strange. All right. I want to say, get this article name. Can you create relevant tags for this article? And populate that in the Let's see if it knows what tags are. Control. It's like it seems it's like stuck in a loop, maybe. Waiting for confirmation. All right.
I think you have to answer it on the control sequence attempt.
Oh, the control sequence tends to clear setback history.
So Command A.
Right.
And what does no sandbox mean?
No idea.
Oh, that's scary.
I have added no, but it didn't add it to the note.
Wait, there they are.
Oh yeah, they're there. So it did. So the answer is yes, it can. There you go. All right, so that is a quick demo of how to set up once you're in Backstage, or once this goes live. I don't know when Mark would be releasing this live, but if you want it now, just subscribe to the Backstage and you can download it, play with it, and that's how you will use Gemini command line interface with Tinderbox. Thoughts, comments, questions, summary? Mark, you're on mute, or we can't hear you.
Yes, so I am. The prototype problem, I think, is an example of Claude being extremely, well, at least more than, sorry, Gemini is more stringent than Claude on the MCP client exactly adhering to the letter of the standards. And so some things that Claude says, okay, that's perfectly reasonable. Gemini will throw up its hands and say, this is an error. This is not responding as it ought to. Something's gone wrong. I'm just not doing it. And I think that happened here. And then after it failed twice, it said, that's not going to work. Is there another way I can do that I can set prototypes? And yeah, there you can use an action. So it tried sending a prototype with an action. That's a different tool. That tool is giving it exactly what it wants. And there was no capital letter where a lowercase letter should be. And everything went according to plan.
Yeah.
This actually is nice for users because just because it failed once doesn't mean it will fail if you kick it and say do it. It makes debugging harder because if people don't report these glitches, then we probably don't find out about them. So do let me know, and we'll look up and find out how to use the sandbox subsequently.
Awesome. All right, everybody. Well, thanks. As always, enjoy engaging conversation. And we have next week the Zettelkasten speaker and talking about his new tool.
Have a great week.
See you, everybody.
Take care,
Bye.
everyone.
Bye bye.